I spent 8 years of my life building something that was not just a business. It was my family's future. I turned my parents' small shop into a $1 million brand, working day and night, sacrificing my personal life, and giving them everything they ever wanted. I believed that hard work, loyalty, and family meant something. But on the night we secured the $8 million deal, I realized how wrong I was. The restaurant was filled with laughter, clinking glasses, and congratulatory toasts. I sat at the table with my parents, feeling something I had not felt in years: pride. I had done this. I had taken something that was barely surviving and turned it into something that people respected, something that mattered. Then my mother took my hand, looked at me with a soft smile, and said the words that shattered everything. "Your brother deserves to run this more than you." I felt the air leave my lungs. The noise around me faded. I waited for her to say something else, to explain, to tell me she did not mean it, but she did not. I stayed silent, because in that moment, I understood. By Monday, they would realize their biggest mistake. Growing up, we did not have much, but we had enough to survive. My parents owned a small shop in the middle of town, a cramped little space with old wooden shelves and a cash register that jammed every other day. It was not much, but it was ours. I spent most of my childhood watching my parents struggle. My father woke up at 5 a.m. to open the shop, and my mother spent hours balancing the accounts, making sure we could afford rent and groceries. There was never extra money. Birthdays were simple, new clothes were rare, and vacations were something we only saw on television. But despite all of that, I never complained. I knew my parents were doing their best, and I promised myself that one day I would make things better. I had a younger brother, Adam. He was 5 years younger than me, the kind of kid who never had to lift a finger because my parents always took care of everything for him. If I wanted something, I had to work for it. If Adam wanted something, he just had to ask. But I never let that bother me. He was my little brother. That was just how things were. When I turned 16, I started working at the shop after school. I watched how my father managed things, ordering supplies, handling customers, trying to negotiate better deals with vendors. I saw the exhaustion in his eyes, the way his hands shook when he counted money at the end of the day, worried that it would not be enough. I wanted to help, so I started learning. I read books on business, marketing, and finance. I watched videos on how to grow a small company. I took notes on what successful businesses did differently. By the time I was 18, I had ideas. Real ideas. "Let me help you modernize the shop," I told my father one evening. "We need to improve the way we do things." He sighed, rubbing his temples. "This is how we have always done business. People come, they buy, they leave. It works." But it was not working. The shop barely made a profit. Customers were going to bigger stores with better prices and more variety. If we did not change, we would lose everything. I did not give up. I created a business plan. I researched suppliers, marketing strategies, and cost-cutting techniques. I convinced my father to give me a chance. "Let me handle it for 1 year," I told him. "If it does not work, I will stop." Reluctantly, he agreed. I started small. I redesigned the shop, rearranged the products to make them more appealing. I introduced discounts, promotions, and a delivery service. I built an online presence, creating social media pages to attract younger customers. And it worked. Within a year, sales had doubled. By the second year, we had expanded our inventory and partnered with new suppliers. For the first time in my life, I saw relief on my father's face. My mother no longer had to stay up late worrying about money. We were finally stable. But I was not done. I worked harder. I took business courses at night, learning everything I could to improve our success. While my friends went to parties, I spent my weekends at the shop. While Adam went on trips with his friends, I stayed behind, making sure everything ran smoothly. I sacrificed everything: my time, my youth, my personal dreams, all to build something my family could be proud of. And they were. At least, that was what I thought. Adam never worked at the shop. He never showed interest, never asked how things were going. He was busy living his life, and my parents never pressured him to contribute. He is still young, they would say. Let him enjoy his time. I never argued. I just kept working. By the time I was 26, our small family shop had turned into a full-scale business. We had multiple employees, a strong customer base, and a reputation that brought in new opportunities. Then, the deal happened. An investor approached us, offering an $8 million contract to expand and franchise our brand. It was everything I had worked for: recognition, financial security, a future that guaranteed my parents would never have to struggle again. The night we signed the deal, I sat at the dinner table, feeling something I had never allowed myself to feel before: pride. I had done this. I had turned nothing into something. And then, as I sat there, my mother took my hand and smiled. "You have done well," she said softly, "but your brother deserves to run this more than you." For a moment, I thought I had misheard her. "My brother?" I asked. "Adam?" She nodded. "He is family. He should be in charge now." I looked at my father, waiting for him to say something. He did not. He just sat there, avoiding my eyes. I turned to Adam, who was leaning back in his chair, completely relaxed, as if this was not a life-changing conversation. "You have never worked a single day in this business," I said, my voice calm but firm. Adam shrugged. "I can learn." I waited for my parents to disagree, to tell him that was not how things worked. But they did not. And in that moment, I realized something. It did not matter how much I had sacrificed. It did not matter how many years I had dedicated to building something from the ground up. In their eyes, I was just a placeholder, a worker. Adam was the real son, the one who deserved everything, even if he had done nothing. I felt something inside me break. But I did not argue. I did not beg for their approval. I just sat there, silent, because I knew something they did not. By Monday, they would understand the weight of their mistake. Monday morning felt like any other day. The sun rose, traffic moved, and the shop opened like it always did. But for me, something had changed. I had spent years ignoring the small signs, brushing off the little moments that should have made me question things. But after what my mother said, I could not push them aside anymore. Still, I did not say anything, not yet. I arrived at the shop early, like always. I unlocked the doors, turned on the lights, and started my usual routine: checking inventory, reviewing invoices, making sure everything was running smoothly. I had built this place from the ground up, and I still took care of it like it was my own child. Then Adam walked in. He was dressed too casually for someone who was learning to manage a business. His shirt was wrinkled, his hair barely brushed. He strolled inside like he had always belonged here, as if this place had been waiting for him all along. "Morning," he said, grabbing a coffee from the break room. I forced a polite nod. "You are here early." "Mom and Dad said I should start training," he said casually, "since I will be running things soon." I paused. "Running things?" "Yeah," he said, sipping his coffee. "I mean, obviously, I have to learn first, but that should not take long, right?" I stared at him, trying to process the level of entitlement in those words. He had never worked here a single day in his life, but somehow he believed he could just step in and take over. "You do realize this business is not some game, right?" I said, keeping my voice even. "It took years to build. This is not something you just pick up in a few weeks." He laughed. "Relax. That is why you are still here, to help me." To help him, not to lead, not to continue what I built, just to guide him so he could step into a role he had done nothing to earn. I clenched my jaw but did not argue. Not yet. For the next few days, I watched as Adam trained. Except he did not train. He sat in on meetings but barely paid attention. He scrolled through his phone while I discussed finances with our accountant. When I asked if he had questions, he shrugged and said, "I will figure it out as I go." He made careless suggestions, risky expansions, unrealistic marketing ideas, pointless cost-cutting decisions. One afternoon, he barged into my office, grinning. "I was thinking," he said, dropping into the chair across from me, "we should start expanding immediately. Open 3 new branches within the next 6 months." I looked up from my laptop. "That is not how business works. You do not expand without a solid foundation." "But we have money now," he said. "Why wait?" "Because it is not just about money," I said, trying to stay patient. "It is about strategy, stability. If we grow too fast without planning, we could lose everything." He rolled his eyes. "You overthink too much," I exhaled slowly. "And you do not think enough?" He laughed, as if I had just told a joke. I wanted to scream, but I stayed calm, because I needed to see how far this would go. That night, I went to my parents' house for dinner. I needed to hear it from them. I needed to know if they truly believed Adam was the right person to take over. The table was set when I arrived. My mother greeted me with a warm smile, as if nothing had changed. "We are so proud of you," she said, as she placed food in front of me. "This business is your greatest achievement." I took a deep breath. "Then why are you giving it to Adam?" The room went silent. My father cleared his throat, suddenly very interested in his plate. My mother hesitated. "Sweetheart, you have done more than enough. You have worked so hard. Do you not think it is time to step back?" "Step back?" I repeated, my voice steady. "I built this from nothing. And you want me to step aside for someone who has never lifted a finger?" "He is family," she said softly. "He deserves a chance." I felt something inside me break. Because in that moment, I realized something. It did not matter how much I had given. It did not matter how much I had sacrificed. To them, I was useful. But Adam was important. And I knew right then, I was done proving my worth to people who had already decided it did not matter. I did not sleep much that night. I kept thinking about my mother's words, the way she had smiled so gently, as if she was saying something kind, as if she had not just dismissed everything I had built. I had given them my time, my effort, my entire youth, and in return, they were handing it all over to Adam. I wanted to believe this was a misunderstanding. Maybe they did not realize how unfair this was. Maybe, if I explained it to them, they would see how ridiculous it was to put Adam in charge. But deep down, I already knew the truth. They had made their choice. And now, I had to make mine. The next morning, I arrived at the shop earlier than usual. I needed some time alone, time to think. But when I unlocked the door, I found Adam sitting in my office. Feet up on the desk, my desk. He did not even look up when I walked in. "Morning," he said casually, scrolling through his phone. I set my bag down, watching him. "You are here early." "Yeah," he said, stretching. "Figured I should start getting used to the place since, I'm going to be running things soon." I clenched my jaw. "You mean learning how things work?" "Same thing," he shrugged. It was not. But I said nothing. That day, I saw everything more clearly than ever before. Adam did not care about the business. He did not ask questions. He did not take notes. He was not interested in learning how things worked. All he did was make careless suggestions like, "Why do we need so many employees? Let's cut costs. Why do we bother with quality control? Just buy cheaper supplies. Why do we have so many rules? It makes things boring." I had spent 8 years building this business carefully, ensuring that every decision was calculated, every risk was weighed. And here he was, treating it like a toy he could play with and throw away if he got bored. At one point, I watched him walk out of an important meeting because he was not in the mood. That was when I knew. This was not just about him taking over. This was about him ruining everything I had built. That night, I called my father. "Can we talk?" I asked. There was a long pause. "Is this about Adam?" I closed my eyes, gripping the phone tighter. "You know this is not right," he sighed. Your mother believes Adam deserves a chance. And what do you believe? Another pause. You have always been strong. You have always figured things out. You will be fine. I let out a bitter laugh. So, because I am responsible, I get punished? And because Adam has done nothing, he gets rewarded? It is not like that, he said weakly. It is exactly like that, I snapped. Silence. You have always been the reliable one, he said after a moment. We never had to worry about you. And there it was. That was the problem. I was too capable, too reliable. They did not appreciate me. They depended on me. They took everything I did for granted because they assumed I would always be there. But I would not. Not anymore. The next day, I made a decision. I arrived at the shop and went straight to my office. Adam was already there, his feet on the desk again. I did not bother greeting him. Instead, I grabbed a folder from my drawer and placed it in front of him. He looked up, raising an eyebrow. What's this? Business reports, I said. If you are taking over, you should understand the numbers. That is our revenue breakdown, supplier contracts, employee salaries, and expense reports for the last 5 years. He made a face. Do I really have to read all this? I leaned against the desk. Yes, because this is what running a business actually looks like. He opened the folder, flipping through a few pages. His eyes glazed over within seconds. He shut it and pushed it aside. Too much information, he muttered. I will just figure it out as I go. I smiled, because that was exactly what I needed to hear. He was never going to put in the work, and soon everyone would see that for themselves. That night, I went home and did something I had not done in years. I started making plans for myself. For the first time in 8 years, I thought about what I wanted. I had spent so long building this business, sacrificing my own dreams, just to make sure my family was secure. But what had it ever gotten me? Nothing. And now that I was finally seeing things clearly, I realized something. I did not owe them my entire life. I had already given them enough, and soon they would understand exactly what that meant. It had been a week since my conversation with my father, a week since he had told me I would figure it out, as if that excused what they were doing. I had not brought it up again. I had not fought. I had not begged, and I had not tried to change their minds. Instead, I had watched and waited. I knew Adam was not capable of running the business. He did not have the patience, the discipline, or the knowledge. He barely understood the difference between revenue and profit. Yet my parents had chosen him. So, I let them. I let Adam sit in my office. I let him make bad decisions. I let him ignore important meetings. I let him act like a boss when he was nothing more than a placeholder, because I knew something they did not. This was going to fall apart. And when it did, I wanted to be nowhere near it. It happened on a Friday afternoon. I had spent the morning going over payroll, making sure our employees were paid on time. Unlike Adam, I still cared about the people who worked here. Then I got a notification on my phone, a bank alert. I frowned. I had not made any transactions today. I opened my banking app, expecting to see the usual activity. Supplier payments, employee salaries, standard business expenses. Instead, my stomach dropped. A single withdrawal. Every penny from our company account. Gone. I felt my heart pound as I clicked on the transaction details. The money had been transferred to a personal account, not mine. Adam's. For a few seconds, I just sat there, staring at the screen. My mind refused to process what I was seeing. I refreshed the page. Maybe it was a glitch. Maybe I had misread something. But the numbers did not change. Adam had drained the account. I stormed into my office, my hands shaking with rage. Adam was sitting there, leaning back in my chair, his feet up on my desk, scrolling through his phone like he had not just committed fraud. He barely looked up when I entered. What? What did you do? My voice was deathly calm, but inside I was burning. He frowned. What are you talking about? I grabbed his phone out of his hand and slammed it on the desk. The money, Adam. Where is the money? He sighed like I was annoying him. Relax. I just moved it. It is still there. Moved it where? To my account, he said casually, stretching his arms. I needed access. You needed access? My voice rose. For what? He rolled his eyes. I was making executive decisions. I took a deep breath, trying to stop myself from throwing his chair across the room. Tell me exactly what you did. Adam sat up, annoyed. I withdrew the money, all right. It is safer in my account. This way, I can invest it how I want, without waiting for approvals. I could not believe what I was hearing. This is not your money, I shouted. You just stole from the business. He scoffed. It is our business, and I am the one in charge now, remember? For a moment, I could not speak. He did not understand. He did not even feel guilty. I clenched my fists. Do you have any idea what you just did? Payroll is due tomorrow. Supplier payments are scheduled for next week. You just emptied the account. How do you plan to cover those costs? He waved his hand dismissively. It will work itself out. I stared at him in disbelief. You are joking, right? You think money just appears when you need it? He shrugged. If we do not have enough, we will just take out a loan. That is what businesses do, right? I felt my chest tighten. You think banks are going to loan money to a company that just lost all its working capital overnight? That has an owner who stole from it? It is not stealing, he snapped. I just moved it. You are making a big deal out of nothing. I took a slow, deep breath. Give it back. Now. He smirked. No. And that was it. That was the moment everything broke. I had spent 8 years building this business. I had worked through sickness, through exhaustion, through moments of doubt. I had sacrificed everything, and he had undone it all in a single transaction. But what hurt more than what he did was what I knew would come next. My parents would defend him, no matter how reckless, no matter how selfish, no matter how damaging. They would take his side, and I was right. That night, I went to my parents' house. I needed them to hear this from me before Adam twisted the story. When I walked in, they were already sitting at the dinner table, waiting. Adam was there too, sitting comfortably, like he had done nothing wrong. I placed my phone on the table and opened the banking app, showing the transaction. Adam stole from the company, I said, my voice cold. He emptied the business account. My mother frowned. What do you mean? He moved all the money into his personal account. Everything. Payroll, supplier funds, gone. My father shifted uncomfortably. I am sure there is a reason for it. I let out a bitter laugh. Yes. His reason is that he thinks he is in charge. Adam leaned back, arms crossed. I am in charge. I turned to my parents. You see what is happening, right? He does not understand what he has done. He is going to ruin everything. Instead of getting angry, my mother sighed. Sweetheart, she said gently. Maybe he made a mistake, but he was just trying to do what he thought was best. My blood turned cold. They were defending him, again, like always. Are you serious? I asked. You are just going to let this go? We can fix this, my father said. We will talk to Adam, make sure he handles things properly. He handles things properly? I snapped. He just stole company money. You think a conversation is going to change that? My mother sighed again, as if I was the one being difficult. We are a family. Families do not fight over money. I closed my eyes. I had expected this, but somehow it still hurt. They had chosen Adam. Over the business, over common sense, over me. I stood up, taking my phone. You are right. Families should not fight over money. They looked relieved for a moment, until I added, that is why I am leaving. Silence. I looked at Adam, who was grinning, thinking he had won. You will not last a year, I told him. Then I turned to my parents. You're making the biggest mistake of your lives. And with that, I walked out. I walked out that night and did not look back. For the first time in my life, I felt no need to fix things. No urge to explain myself, no desire to prove my worth. I had spent years doing that, and it had never mattered. So, I let them have what they wanted. Adam wanted the business. It was his. My parents believed he could handle it. Let them find out for themselves. And I walked away. At first, everything seemed fine, at least on the surface. Adam carried himself like a successful businessman, acting as if he had built the company from the ground up. He gave interviews, posted flashy social media updates, and made bold statements about expanding the business to the next level. But I knew better. He had no plan. He had no real strategy. He was burning through money without realizing that once it was gone, there would be no saving him. The problem started small. Payroll was delayed 1 month. Suppliers complained about late payments. A few key employees quit, sensing trouble ahead. Adam ignored it all. Businesses go through ups and downs, he told my parents. We are fine. And they believed him. Even as clients started pulling out, even as monthly losses piled up, they still believed in him. At the 3-month mark, the situation had worsened. Employees had stopped trusting him. Suppliers had started demanding advance payments. A major client had cut ties with the business. Adam was losing control, but instead of fixing the mistakes, he doubled down. He borrowed more money, trying to cover expenses. He cut costs recklessly, lowering product quality. He ignored warnings, thinking things would work out. But they did not. Because business does not run on luck. At the 6-month mark, it all collapsed. Adam had drained company funds without a backup plan. The suppliers he had dismissed, they refused to work with him anymore. The employees he had mistreated, they walked out, leaving operations in chaos. The clients I had spent years building trust with, they cut ties, unwilling to work with someone careless. And then, the final blow came. The investor I had worked so hard to secure pulled out completely. No money, no support, no business. It was over. I found out through a mutual friend. The company had officially shut down. A brand that had once been worth millions, a business I had built from nothing, was gone. Not because of the economy, not because of bad luck, but because of greed, arrogance, and entitlement. I thought I would feel satisfied, that I would feel justice had been served. But all I felt was emptiness, because it did not have to end this way. They had a choice. They had chosen wrong. One evening, I came home and found an envelope slipped under my door. It was from my mother. Inside was a letter, written in careful handwriting. We made a mistake. We should have listened to you. We lost everything because we refused to trust the person who gave us everything. If we could take it back, we would. We are sorry. I stared at the letter for a long time. Then I folded it, placed it back in the envelope, and put it in a drawer. I did not call them. I did not respond. Because some things cannot be undone. Adam moved back in with my parents after losing everything. His confidence? Gone. His arrogance? Shattered. The business? Destroyed. The world had shown him the consequences of his choices, and now there was no one left to protect him. And my parents? They had put everything into him, believed in him, trusted him. Now they were left picking up the pieces. And me? I was finally free. It had been a year since I walked away. 12 months of silence. 12 months of rebuilding my life, away from the shadows of my family's expectations. At first, it had felt strange, waking up without the weight of responsibility pressing down on me, not having to check emails before breakfast, not having to put out fires in a business that was no longer mine. For years, I had lived my life for them. Now, for the first time, I was living for myself. I had moved to a new city, far away from the whispers of my past. It was not a drastic change. I did not pack up my life overnight or run away like some dramatic escape. But slowly, step by step, I built something new. A new home, a new job, a new sense of peace. I had taken a position at a consulting firm, helping small businesses grow. It was ironic in a way. I was using the same skills that built my family's business, but this time, I was helping people who actually valued my work. I was respected here, listened to, and I was happy. For the first time in a long time, I did not feel like I had to prove anything. Every now and then, I would hear about Adam and my parents through mutual connections. I never asked, but the stories still found their way to me. The business was completely gone. Adam had tried to start something new, but nobody trusted him anymore. Investors refused to back him. Former employees wanted nothing to do with him. Suppliers he had mistreated in the past shut their doors on him. He had burned too many bridges, and now he was paying the price. My parents? They had lost everything: the shop, the money, their stability. They had put everything into Adam, believing he would make them proud. And he had let them down, just like I told them he would. One afternoon, I received a call from an unknown number. I usually ignored them, but something told me to pick up. It was my mother. Her voice was softer than I remembered, weaker. "How are you?" she asked hesitantly. I hesitated before answering. "I am doing well." There was a pause. "That is good," she said quietly. "That is really good." I could tell she wanted to say more, but she did not. And I did not ask, because I already knew. She wanted me to come back, to fix things, to be the child who always put family first, no matter what they did to me. But I was not that person anymore. I had moved on. That night, I sat on my balcony, staring out at the city lights. I thought about everything that had happened, the betrayal, the heartbreak, the loss. And I realized something. I was grateful. Because if they had not pushed me away, I never would have walked away. And if I had never walked away, I never would have found this peace. They thought they were punishing me by choosing Adam, but in reality, they had set me free. I learned the hardest lesson of my life. Some people will take everything from you if you let them, but I also learned something even more important. I am worth more than what I can offer others. And today, as I start a new chapter, I know one thing: I will never make the same mistake again.